today's lesson video, we are going to start looking at long multiplication. So yesterday we went through my top times table tips. It's really important to know your table facts before you start to do long multiplication. If you are not very confident with all your table facts, I recommend you practice daily or practice very regularly. So we're going to start by looking at how we use a formal written method. So we'll look at how we're going to lay it out, and then we're going to build up with our stages. We're going to build up in steps from a 2-digit number by a 1 to a pair of 2-digit numbers, and then we're going to increase one of our numbers to 3 digits and 4 digits. So let's start by looking at what a formal written method looks like. So we're going to move from calculations such as 7 times 5 to something like 36 times 5. Now with our first calculation, 7 times 5, both numbers are within the up to 12 times 12 times table. So we can just do that mentally. So we can calculate that in our head. So we should be able to do 7 times 5 is 35. When you get a 2-digit number and we have a number now that's larger than 12, that is not within our 12 times 12 times table. So we need to use a written method. Now there are various strategies you can use for multiplying, but I am going to be working towards the written method, the formal written method. So the first thing I want to do is to write my 2-digit number at the top, my 1-digit number underneath, exactly as if we were adding or subtracting, the same layout. I'm going to put my multiplication symbol in and then put in my equals bar. So I've laid it out in a different way to when we're just doing our normal times table facts. So this is the first part. Now what I might want to do is also to remind myself of the value, the place value of the digits. So I've got 10s here and I've got 1s here. It's really important, like with adding and subtracting, we keep all our digits in the correct column. So we would imagine that there are lines coming down, although there won't be. You can imagine that those imaginary lines are there. We need to line our digits up in the correct place. Now I'm simply going to use my times table facts to calculate. I always start from the smallest side, so I'm going to start from my 1s, and I'm going to multiply my 6 by my 5, which is 30. And now I'm going to multiply my 3 by my 5, but this 3 is actually 3 10s. Okay, so it's not just 3, it's 3 10s. So 3 times 5 is 15, 3 10s by 5 is 15 10s or 150, and I'm going to write it down underneath. So you can see, if I highlight, that this times 5 is here and this times 5 is here, and then we simply add the two together. So 0 and 0 is 0, 3 and 5 10s is 8 10s, and no hundreds plus 100 is 100. And there we have our answer. To show it another way, I might not separate my 10s and my 1s. I still need to be aware of my 10s and my 1s. So 6 times 5 is 30. Now this time I put my 0 here and I carry my 3 10s here. But in some schools they carry the 3 here. Doesn't really matter where you put it as long as you're consistent and you remember that you're carrying it. So do what you're doing in your school, pick away. I personally put my 3 here. I make it small so it doesn't then get confused with my digits. So I've got my 6 times 5 is 30. This is exactly like we would do with adding, where you carry any digits over, any extra over. So now we move to 3 times 5, which is 15. I'm going to add my 3 to my 15, which gives me 18. So it gives me the same answer. Both ways give you the same answer. Let's try another question, and we'll do both methods again. So I'm going to start with my expanded method. So I'm going to do 43 multiplied by 5. If you're not super confident with your times tables, but you want to start learning this method, then I recommend using this digit here. Should be a times table that you are confident with. So 5 is a good one because that's often one of the first ones we're confident with, or 2, or if you know your 3s or your 4s. So you can just practice with 2-digit numbers multiplied by using a times table you're confident with. And then that way you can start to practice the method before you're confident with your times tables. But it is still important to then practice your times tables. So I'm going to think about, I'm going to highlight so I'm going to do that first. I'm going to do my 3 times 5 first, which is 15. And then I'm going to move on to my 4, remembering that it's 4 tens. It's not 4, it's 4 tens. So if I think about it like 4 tens, I can still say 4 times 5 is 20. So 4 tens times 5 is 20 tens. 20 tens is the same as 200. Okay, let me just quickly write something here. It might help you visualize if you haven't already. That's 4 times 5. That's 40 times 5. That's 400 times 5. Can you see what's happening there? Okay, even just practicing this skill is something quite beneficial if you haven't grasped that already. Okay, so I've done my 40 times 5, and I've also done my 3 times 5. So I've made sure that both of my digits have been multiplied. Now I add them up. 5 and 0 is 5. 1 and 0 is 1. Nothing and 2 is 2. So I've got 215. What about if I did it a shorter way? So this is what you're moving towards. 3 times 5 is 15. 5 ones and 1 10, which I carry over. You might carry it here. I carry it at the bottom. 4 times 5 is 20, plus my carried 1 is 21. Both have the same answer. You want to work towards this method, but until you really understand why you're carrying, you can do this until you've built up your confidence. Okay, let's move on now to a pair of 2-digit numbers. So I'm going to do 24 times 35. And I've put I've labelled my 10s and my 1s here. Okay, I am going to start off by multiplying by my 5. I always start with my 1s column. I'm going to almost ignore my 3. So let's just imagine that this 3 is not there. Okay, let's just treat it as if we were doing 24 times 5. Okay, I'm going to start with the expanded version. So 4 times 5 is 20, and 2 times 5, 2 tens times 5 is 100. Okay, here I have completed 24 times 5. Okay, I've got my 24 times 5 there. Now I want to work with my 30. Okay, so I'm going to multiply all of 24 by 30. Now, when I start, I've got 4 1s times 3 10s. I need to remember that this 3 is worth 3 10s. So 4 1s times 3 10s, I'm basically doing this, 4 times 30. And if I know that 4 times 3 is 12, I know that 4 times 30 is 120. So I can write in my answer. And now I'm doing 2 times 3, but they're both 10. So I'm actually doing 2 tens times 3 tens. If I know that 2 times 3 is 6, 20 times 3 will be 60, and 20 times 30 will be 600. Can you see how I built it up? If you ever get stuck, don't sit and try and think about it too hard in your head. Sometimes we can just really confuse ourselves. Just jot it down like I've done there. It'll be much quicker and then you'll be able to see it visually. So my answer is 600. So here I have 24 times 30. So what I now need to do is add all my columns together. So what I'm going to do is just select all of this and move it up a bit. Okay, I've just moved it over a little bit so I have space underneath. So I now need to add everything together. I'm going to use a different colour so that we can see that we've got a different part of our sum. So starting with my ones column, I have 0 and 0 and 0 and 0. That makes 0. Going to my tens column, I have 2 and 0, 2 and 0. That makes 4 tens. Going to my hundreds. Now, although I don't have hundreds labelled, I can just put that in there because we've actually got digits now that move into the hundreds. So going down my hundreds, I have 100 and 100 and 600, which makes 800. So I have my answer of 840. Now I'm just going to jot that down up the top here so that I can rub this all out and we can have a look at how we would do this without having to expand everything. Okay, so we're going to start by thinking about just this digit, okay? And we're going to ignore this digit. Now, obviously, I don't want you to cross out your tens number if you're doing a calculation. I'm just doing this here to help you to imagine that you're just ignoring that tens digit to start off with. What we're going to do in this section is find our answer to 24 times 5. So we start with this 4 times 5, and that's 20, but I carry my 2. I'm going to put my 2 there. We're now doing this 2 times 5, but remembering it's 20 times 5. 20 times 5 is 100. Or 2 times 5 is 10, plus my 2 is 12. Okay, it's 120 or 12 if you're just thinking about it as digits. You don't need to keep saying 20 times 5, but it is good to know that it's 20 times 5. So I would just do 2 times 5 is 10, plus 2 is 12. But I'm aware that it's actually 120 because look, it's my 12 tens is the same as 120. All my digits are actually in the right columns. So here I have my answer to 24 times 5. My first row is 24 times 5. I now am going to move on to my second row. And I'm going to multiply 24 times 3. Now, what is very useful to notice here is that we're going to be multiplying everything by 3 tens, by 30. So that means that any calculation I do is going to need to move over to the left. So if I explain what I mean, if I was doing 3 times 4, I would have 12. But if I'm doing 30 times 4, which is what I am doing, I'm doing 120. What's happened is my 12 has moved over. If I look at my place value column, my 12 has moved over one space to the left and I put a placeholder in. Okay, so when I'm doing 4 times 3 here, I'm really doing 4 times 30. Now, instead of you having to think, oh, it's 4 times 30, best thing to do, when you go down to the next line, you put a placeholder in. Coming back down to this place value grid at the bottom, can you see if I put a placeholder in, then I only need to do the 3 times 4, and I just put it next to my placeholder. It automatically makes the answer correct. So 4 times 3 is 12. Carry my 1. I don't need to worry about it being 120 because I've put my placeholder in. And now I can do 2 times 3, which is 6, and add my placeholder of 1, which makes 7. Now actually we did 20 times 30, which is 600, plus 100 is 700, but it's automatically done that for us because of where we put our digits. So now we add. So we've got 24 times 5 and 24 times 30. We've done it separately, and then now we add. 0 and 0 is 0, 2 and 2 is 4, 1 and 7 is 8. Can you see it is the same answer both times? Let's have a go at doing another example. But this time we are going to do a 3-digit number by a 2-digit number. It is the same concept. Okay, so I still want to write in my place value, headings, and I still want to make sure that I'm lining things up. So let's go for 349 multiplied by, let's go for 38. So I'm choosing harder times table numbers now. So we've got our 8 in here. If you want to practice this method and you're not confident with your tables, just use easier digits. So 2 and 5, 2 and 4. So you can just change the digits if you want to just practice the method, but there is no escaping the fact that you do need to know your times tables. Okay, so we're going to start with just focusing on our ones. Okay, so our first line, we're just going to focus on our 8s. So we do 9 times 8 is 72. So I'm going to put the 2 1s and carry my 7. 4 times 8 is 32. I'm going to add my 7 is 39. Put my 9 in, carry my 3. 3 times 8 is 24, plus my 3 is 27. So you'll notice here I'm just saying 9 times 8, 4 times 8, 3 times 8. I'm not saying 9 1s times 8, 4 10s times 8, 300s times 8. Okay, we still end up getting the right value of our digits. My 3 times 8, which was 24, 2400s is actually 2400. It automatically my 27 here is 22,700. The digits are lined up in the right column, so they will automatically have the right place value, but it is still important that you understand what is happening. So I'm now going to move on to the 30. So I start by putting a placeholder in. Okay, so now automatically when I do 9 times 3, which is 27, it's become 270 because I put my placeholder in there automatically. So what I quite like to do as well is just tick off when I've used each digit. So I used each digit by 8, and now I've done 9 times 30, because when we put our placeholder in here and we move down to the next column, we're working to the left of each number. So my answer to 9 times 3 didn't go underneath my 9, it went underneath my 3 here. It's all moved over to the left, and this is where people can miss things out. So I've just put a tick there. 9 times 3 is 27. 4 times 3 is 12, plus my 2 is 14. 4 goes there, 1 gets carried over. I'm going to put a tick. I know I've done it. 3 times 3 is 9, plus my 1 is 10. I don't have anything else to calculate, so I'm going to put my 10 down here. Now I have my 2 answers. So just to recap, here I've got 349 times 8. Here I've got 349 times 30. If you want to pause the video and check, do so. And then finally, I need to add up my amounts. 2 plus 0 is 2, 9 plus 7 is 16, 7 plus 4 plus 1 is 12, 2 plus 1 is 3, and 1 plus nothing is 1. Now, what you need to be careful is when you're adding in your columns that you don't add these little bits, which is why some people carry their numbers up the top. But as long as you don't mix those up and you make them smaller, or you cross them out, or you do something so that you make sure you're only adding up the digits that are in both rows. Now, what I would also do is count in from the end of my number, 1, 2, 3, and put a separator. So my answer is 13,262. Shall we do another one? So we'll do another 3-digit by 2-digit. Pause the video if you want to have a go yourself alongside with me. So I'm just going to write in my headings. And I'm going to choose, I'm actually going to do, let's do a 4-digit number. 1,453, and I'm going to times it by 26. Okay, so I need to put another place value heading in. So this is 1,000. Okay, it's exactly the same as we've been doing. We start by just thinking about this digit. So we're going to actually start by doing 1,453 times 6. That's what our first row is going to be. Now, in actual fact, what I often encourage students to do is to set your number out, set your calculation out, put some large lines in for your 2 rows, and then put your answer line in. You know that you're going to be separating. This is not necessary to label this part here, but it might help you to build your understanding. So you're going to have 2 rows. Now, what I would also do, once I've written the numbers in that I'm calculating and I've put in my answer bars, I put in a placeholder here before I even start, okay? Because that can be something you can forget when you're getting carried away with your times table facts, especially if they're like larger numbers and a bit more complicated to calculate. So we're going to start. 3 times 6 is 18. Put my 8 here and I carry my little 1. 5 times 6 is 30, plus my 1 is 31. I'm going to tick and tick because I've used both those numbers once. 4 times 6 is 24, plus my 3 is 27. Carry my 2, use my 4. 1 times 6 is 6, plus my 2 is 8. Okay, so I've got my first row of numbers. I'm now going to move on to thinking about my 20, sorry. I've done my 6. So now I'm going to do the next row. So done this. We're now doing 1,453 times 20. So I've already put my placeholder in, so I can just think about my 20 as a 2. 3 times 2 is 6. You can see automatically it's made it 60 by putting that placeholder there. I'm going to tick it. 5 times 2 is 10. 0 goes there, my 1 gets carried. Tick it. 4 times 2 is 8, plus my 1 is 9. Tick it. 1 times 2, sorry, is 2. Pop that in there. Okay, so I have calculated 1,453 times 20. Didn't tick that earlier. That has been done twice. So each digit has been used. I've definitely put my placeholder in. Leaving out that placeholder is a really common mistake, so that's the thing you want to look out for. If you want to check on your calculator that each of those rows is correct, then do so. The final thing we do is we add. 8 plus 1 is 8. 1 plus 6, we ignore this because that was carried. 1 plus 6 is 7. 7, we ignore that. Plus 0 is 7. 8, ignore that and that. Plus 9 is 17. Carry my 1. Nothing here. Plus 2. And my carried 1 is 3. Count in 3 from the end, put in a separator. My answer is 37,778. So there you have it, the progression for long multiplication. Now you can write yourself some sums very easily and check them very easily yourself using a calculator. If you need to expand each digit as we did at the beginning, then do so. If you are not very good with your times tables yet, then choose smaller digits just so that you can practice the method and the layout first. But make sure you do keep practicing your times tables. So if you would like some more complicated questions and you want a bit more challenge, then on our app, which is free to download in the App Store, there are 49 lessons all related to all of the national curriculum objectives. So it's really important that the difference between this app and lots of stuff out there is it is directly linked to the national curriculum. What you find in the national curriculum for Year 6, you will find on the app. Okay, and it has all been designed to have lots of challenges in there and to directly link to what you would find in a SATs paper. Regardless of the SATs being cancelled or not, the learning still needs to be done even if you're not getting tested for it. The learning will need to be there to take you forward for Year 7. So you can have a look at the challenges on there. There is a section on long multiplication. So the objective is to be able to multiply a 4-digit by a 2-digit whole number. Okay, but we've got some find the missing value problems on there, which then test your skills that little bit further. So you can download that on the Apple Store or on the Google Play Store for free, and it's only $4.99 a month to subscribe and access all the other 49 objectives. Hope you've enjoyed today's lesson.